There are close to 1 million Americans getting a Social Security check mailed to their new permanent address in their newly adopted country somewhere else in the world other than the good old USA. Now, are they the bold, the adventurous, the risk takers who have decided to live in retirement overseas? Or are they just regular people like us who have chosen to live in retirement somewhere other than the United States? Let's see what we can find out. Hi, I'm Andy Asher. I am editor over here at BloomerBoomer, and today's show is all about retiring abroad in 2020. Now, to find out, I have invited Lief Simon, who is a leader and an expert on international real estate and on offshore living. We're also going to discover the 2020 top 10 best places to retire overseas his team assembles each year. Hey, Lief. It is just great having you here, and I know that you've got lots of information. Thanks for joining us.
Great. I'm happy to be here, Andy.
Well, so the big news that you've just published the 2020 top 10 list of best places to retire overseas, and you have a couple of surprises, I understand. You have named not one best place to retire, but two best places. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. This year, the scores came out where Algarve in Portugal and Mazatlan in Mexico were, virtually a tie statistically. We have our criteria that we go through, give each category a score, and so they don't score the same in each category, but their overall score put them up, and so we gave them top honors as number one.
Wow, and in this area of statistics and data and polling and everything, it sounds pretty impressive. You put a lot into it.
Yeah, the categories, I think there are 13 categories covering cost of living, healthcare, entertainment, recreation, whether English is spoken, if there's already an expat community, crime and safety is a big factor that people worry about as well. So we do all those for the destination, and then we have categories for the country in general, with regard to real estate ownership, if there are any restrictions, taxes, things like that.
Well, let's get into that. And, I know that you've been doing this for a long time, and I am really curious, what have you learned here? Is there anything unique, let's say, about the folks who've decided to retire in a new home in a foreign land in the world? Why I'm asking, for me, I get into a comfort zone here, and the thought of living elsewhere can get pretty scary for me. So tell me, is there a typical type of person?
I'm not sure there's a typical type of person. I guess if they had one thing in common, they have a sense of adventure. But originally this idea 30 years ago was kind of fringy, and people were looking at it as a way to just survive in retirement and be able to afford to live. And today we're finding younger people looking to either retire early or take a business with them overseas, and really are more about the adventure than necessarily finding the cheapest place to live. And that's what we try and advise people on. Don't just go someplace because it looks cheaper on paper, because you can find cheap places in the U.S. To live. You want to go to a place that has the amenities that you want. If you want to be near a beach, if you want to be near skiing, near golf, those kinds of things. And there's plenty of places in the world that you can find affordable. You just need to find the one that you're more interested in.
Well, why we become more adventurous, that's, I guess, a story of another time, because that must be some trend of some sort or another. But I was running down now the top 10 list of best places to retire overseas, and I was checking out the monthly budget to live there, and most were close or even below a monthly Social Security check compared to the high living costs here. The idea of living for, just under $1,500 or $2,300 a month, it does sound almost too good to be true.
Right, and these budgets are general starter budgets. You can live for less in some of these places than our actual budget. You certainly live for more in any of these places. And it depends on what's important to you. The biggest factor moving anywhere is going to be housing. So if you want to live in a 4-bedroom mansion, that's going to be more expensive anywhere than a small studio. So that's a big factor. Downsizing in retirement is a standard thing anyway. So we focus on a 2-bedroom apartment when we figure out the monthly housing budgets for rent.
Oh, that's good information to know. So when many people think about retiring overseas, they do it because, you know, it's cheaper, as we just talked about. So can we start talking about someone who may be relying entirely on a Social Security check? Is that possible?
It is possible, but there are some setup expenses with moving anywhere, but in particular moving overseas. If you're going to get legal residency, that's going to be an expense. So you'll need some savings for that if you're mostly living off of your Social Security. But once you're there, again, we know people that have lived in Panama City, for example, which is no longer inexpensive. That's where I spend most of my time these days. But that they were living on less than $1,000 a month. But again, they found very affordable housing. They didn't go out to eat a lot, and because the city can be expensive for restaurants. But they were having, you know, the time of their life, learning Spanish and enjoying Panama.
Boy, is that an important point too, but it's doable, it sounds like, and that's great news. Now, I really want to jump into hearing about some of these exotic places, but I have to ask you how someone overcomes the visa and the government restrictions. What kind of hoops does someone have to jump through to live permanently overseas?
So for residency in most of the countries we talk about, they have what we refer to as a pensionado visa, so a retirement visa. So Panama, for example, if you have $1,000 of pension income, so Social Security, you can qualify for the pensionado visa in Panama. In Portugal, there's two ways to get residency. One is not quite a pensionado; they don't call it that visa. But it's self-sufficiency visa. So if you have 1,200 euros of income, you can qualify for residency in Portugal. Or if you've got some investment money, you can buy a property under their Golden Visa program for anywhere between 280,000 euros to 500,000 euros, depending on where it is and how old it is, and get residency through that.
Okay.
So. Yeah. Well, so it's fairly easy to get legal residency in the countries that we talk about. That's one of the factors that we cover, that we include in the ratings and the scores that we do for the country, how easy it is to get residency.
Well, there is the totally pragmatic side of me, so I have to ask you about medical care, and I expect the first thing you'll hear from the naysayers is, oh, but what if you get sick or need a doctor? You know, that would worry me. Should it?
It depends. It depends on where you go. So, you know, we talk about Belize, and Belize has two of the top 10 this year. They're almost always something in Belize in the top 10. It's a favorite of my wife's, but Belize would probably have the least high tech, I guess, best way to put it, medical care of all the countries that we talk about. So if you have something serious like cancer and you're living in Belize, probably you're going to go back to the U.S. for treatment. But all the other countries that we talk about, you know, Portugal, any place in Europe, is going to have high quality medical care. Colombia, Medellin is a country on the list, and Medellin has 5 of the top, I think it's 40 hospitals in South America. And the medical care can be as good or better than the U.S., and certainly it's cheaper.
Yeah. Yes, and so I don't know how someone moves to become an expatriate or an expert, but it seems to me that you'd want to visit your new home before taking the leap. How does that work from your experience?
So we help people. We put conferences on so they can come and see the place and learn from the experts in the country. But if you're just wanting to try this idea on for size, you can start by just visiting a place for a few months. So with a U.S. passport, you can visit most countries for up to 3 months as a tourist on just a tourist visa, rent an Airbnb, or you can stay in a hotel, but of course an Airbnb is going to be cheaper for that time, and check out a place and see if it fits. And if it doesn't, no harm done. You've had a nice vacation. You can go back home and then look for the next place that you want to try.
You know, and life in some of these places must be, you know, so totally different than what we've gotten used to. You know, give us an idea of what a day in the life is like living in places like Portugal or Ecuador or Slovenia, maybe.
Yeah, it's so obviously I'm not retired, but I've lived overseas for 20 years now. So for me, I go to work, and then go to the beach on the weekends or do whatever the locals do. When we're in Paris, we go to museums, that kind of thing. So in Portugal, for example, the Algarve is a coastal destination. There's golf courses, so you can go golfing. You can go to the beach. There's vineyards. You can visit. There's some museums in the Algarve. And so really, you got to choose a place that has the things that you're interested in. So if you're interested in nightlife, you need to go to some place that's more urban, a city, Lisbon, Paris, Medellin, Panama City, for example. If you're interested in surfing, which, there's a lot of older people that want to spend their day surfing. That's their dream. And so coastal areas, Panama, Mexico, even Portugal, you can go surfing. And so that's what you could spend your day doing. The people that we know that are successful in moving overseas find something to occupy their day. I joke at conferences that if you don't find something, and maybe that something is just volunteering, there's lots of volunteering opportunities in most of these countries. But if you don't find something to do every day, you could end up in the local expat bar by 10 a.m., drunk by lunchtime, and just complaining about the place because you haven't put yourself out there.
Like anywhere, yeah, you do have to do that, and it seems like a scary decision, leaving behind family and friends for someone just watching this now who is just considering moving overseas. How should they proceed, right now?
So the first thing is there's so many, it depends. The answer always is it depends. If it's a couple, we do hear from a lot of couples where one spouse is interested in the idea and the other spouse is adamant against it. And so for those people, we advise just get the spouse who doesn't like the idea on a plane and take them on a week or two vacation and build up to maybe trying to stay in a place for a few months. But you've got to start with what's important to you. And so, in fact, on our website, you can find a checklist, and it falls into the categories mostly of what we have for the index. So is cost of living important? If that's number one, then you need to focus on that. Healthcare. Do you have a chronic health issue that you'll need to be near a hospital? So you can focus on that for locations, not only countries, but also places in the country. Are you going to be comfortable learning a language? If not, then you either need to be in an English-speaking country, which we have, Belize is one and Malta is another on the list, or in an area like the Algarve where there's a lot of English-speaking expats, but also the Portuguese speak English because of long-standing relationship with the UK, but also all of the tourists that come. Even a German tourist that goes to Portugal, they're going to speak English to the Portuguese rather than try and speak Portuguese or German to them. So language can be a factor. Ease of access back to the U.S. So you talk about leaving friends and family. The big factor is leaving the grandkids. And so you want to...
For me, that would be the case, yeah.
To be able to get back, then that's why, Mexico, Central America, and even the north part of South America are a place that people consider a lot rather than Europe because it's closer, easier to get back to the U.S. But the other thing we try and tell people is pick a place where the older grandkids will want to come and visit grandma and grandpa, and then get them on a plane to come down and visit you as well.
Perfect. Lief, where can people reach you to learn more about all of this?
So our website is liveinvestoverseas.com, and if they go to the website, they can sign up for one of our free e-letters and ease into it by just reading what we write about for free every day.
All right. Thanks so much, Lief.
It's my pleasure, Andy.
Well, we've been talking to Lief Simon. He is a leader and an expert on international real estate and offshore living and the live and invest overseas. You can also find out more about Lief right here at BloomerBoomer.com. Until next time, so long.